Hi everyone, Ramesh here. Welcome to React.js Spring Boot REST API example tutorial. In this tutorial, we will create a simple single page application using React as a front end and Spring Boot as backend. React is an open source JavaScript library for building user interfaces, and React is created by Facebook. So unlike Angular, React is not a framework, it is just a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. Alright, and as we know that Spring Boot is popular especially for developing RESTful web services and microservices, and we are going to use Spring Boot to develop a RESTful web services and React to develop a user interface. Let us take a look at our client and server architecture. At the server side we have Spring Boot application, and at the client side we have React application. One thing I want to discuss with you guys, like React is not concerned with HTTP. React is just a JavaScript library we use to build a user interfaces. Okay, in order to make a HTTP call or in order to make a REST API call, we have to use a third-party HTTP library. In our case, we are going to use Axios HTTP library. You can also use a browser fetch API in order to make a REST API call. Alright, here are the prerequisites for this tutorial. You should have basic understanding of HTML and CSS. You should have a basic knowledge of JavaScript, and you should know the Spring Boot basics, and make sure that you should have installed Node.js and npm on your machine. What we will build in this tutorial, we are going to build two projects. At a server side, we are going to create Spring Boot backend project which exposes REST API. We are going to use SpringMQ to develop and expose REST API, and at a repository layer we are going to use Spring Data GPU to reduce a lot of boilerplate code, and we are going to use S2 in-memory database to store the data. Okay, and at a client side we will create a React front-end application which will consume a REST API that is exposed by Spring Boot application. And in a React application we are going to use Axios HTTP library to make a REST API call, and we will create a React component to display a list of users on a web page. So look at here, this is the user interface. We create a React component to display a list of users on a web page. So notice here we are not going to create a crude full stack application over here. So I will plan to create a new series on full stack React Spring Boot project in upcoming videos. So in this video we will focus on step by step creating a single page React application with Spring Boot. Okay, great. We'll develop this project from the scratch, step by step, that is line by line coding. So I highly recommend you guys to start coding with me so that you will learn a lot of things. I am in Eclipse STS IDE now. In order to create Spring Boot project, go to the file, new, and then choose Spring Starter project. So look at here, this is the Spring Initializer user interface. Basically Spring Initializer is integrated in STS IDE. We can use Spring Initializer to quickly create a Spring based application. So let's go ahead and let's give a name to the project. Let's give a name as Spring Boot backend. Alright, and type as Maven, packaging jar, Java version 8, language Java, and let's give group as net.javaguides. You can give any group ID that you want, and artifact ID is going to be our application name, so let's keep as it is. Version, let's keep default version as it is, and this is the description of our project, and this is package. Let's change the package. I am going to give package name as net.javaguides.springboot. Alright, once you are happy with the details, click next, and look at here, this is the Spring Boot latest release, and I am going to keep this latest release as it is. And here we are going to develop a simple REST API. For that, what I will do, I will just select Spring Web Dependency. So we use Spring Web Dependency to create a RESTful web services as well as SpringMQ web applications, and this dependency internally provides Apache Tomcat server as a default embedded server. Okay, great. Now what we'll do, we will use in-memory database, that is H2 database. Let us select H2 database library. Let's go ahead and let's pick up Spring Data JPA dependency. Alright, so Spring Data JPA dependency is basically we use to reduce a boilerplate code that is required to develop a DAO layer. Okay, and Spring Data JPA internal uses Hibernate framework as a JPA provider. Alright guys, once you select all the required dependencies, then hit finish. This will create a new Spring Boot project in Eclipse STSID. Alright guys, we have created a simple Spring Boot project in Eclipse STSID. Now what we'll do, we'll create a packaging structure. Right click on a package, new, and then choose package, and let's create a new package. Let's name it as model. Let's quickly create one more package. Let's name it as repository, and let's go ahead and let's create one more package. Let's name it as controller. Alright, now what we'll do, we'll create a JPA entity. Right click on model package, new, and then choose class, and let's give name as user. We're going to create a user JPA entity. Let's create few fields: private log ID, private string, first name, private string last name, and private string email. Alright, let's keep only these fields, and let's go ahead and let's create getter setter methods to access these fields, and let's also create a constructor here. And let's create a default constructor. Alright, so this is a simple Java class. Let's make this Java class as a JPA entity by adding JPA annotations. Let's use @entity annotation and @table annotation, and let's give a name to the table. Let's say users, and let's create a primary key for this table. Let's use @id annotation, and let's give a primary key generation strategy to this primary key, and we're going to use identity as a primary key generation strategy. Now let's use @column annotation to provide a column name or to map a column to the fields. Here let's give first underscore name. Let's copy this, and similarly last underscore name. Okay, great. If you don't specify @column annotation, then by default the name of the column is the field name, and if you don't specify @table annotation, by default the name of the table is user, that is a class name. Okay, so it's pretty simple JPA entity. Now let's quickly create a repository. Right click on a package, new, and create interface. Let's name it as user repository. Great, and this interface extends JPA repository. Now we'll get code operations on user entity, and let's annotate this interface with @repository annotation. Alright, now we'll get a CRUD database operations for user JPA entity. Now what we'll do, we'll create a REST API. In order to create a REST API, we need to first create the controller. Right click on a controller package, new, and then choose class, and let's give a class name as user controller. Okay, and let's annotate this controller with @REST controller annotation, and also use @request mapping annotation, and let's give a path as API. Okay, and let's quickly create a simple REST API. Let's say public list of users. Let's say get users, the name of the method, and here we are going to use @get mapping annotation, and let's specify the endpoint URL like users. Alright, and here we'll inject user repository, private user repository, alright. Now simply return this dot user repository dot find all. So find all method basically returns a list of users. If you mouse over find all method, you can see here this method returns a list of users. Alright, now we have developed a simple REST endpoint that is users, which returns a list of users to the client. Okay, that is pretty much about developing the REST API. Now what we'll do, we'll insert few records in a users table. For that, what we'll do, we'll implement command line runner interface. It provides a run method, and this run method basically executes when we deploy our application in an embedded default Tomcat server. So here what I will do, I will just auto wire or inject. So here we want to save a user object to the database, right? For that we are going to use user repository. Basically user repository offers crude database operations for user entity, right? Now what we'll do, we'll simply call user repository dot save method, and here we pass user object. Let's create a user like first name as Ramesh, last name as Fartari, email as ramesh@gmail.com. Let's create a few more users. Now we have created user objects and we have inserted user objects into database. Now let's go ahead and let's run our Spring Boot project and let's test the REST API. Alright, look at here, our Spring Boot project is up and running on default Tomcat server on port 8080. Now let's open our Chrome browser and let's test the REST API. The REST API is users localhost 8080/API/users. Alright, in a browser just type localhost 8080/API/users and hit enter. Yeah, here we go, we got a JSON response from the server. So these are the list of users that we got from the server. Now we have successfully created and exposed a REST endpoint. Alright guys, it's time to create a new React application to consume a REST endpoint that just we have created and exposed using Spring Boot project. We are going to use create React app command line tool to create and set up a React application. Open a browser and just type create React app and hit enter, and go to create react app.dev website. So this is the official website for this tool. This is a getting started page of this documentation, and we are going to use this page to quickly create and set up a React application. So look at here, create React app is a command line tool, and it is official supported way to create a single page React applications. It offers a modern build setup with no configuration. Okay, so here are the commands. We need these 3 commands to quickly create and start a React application. All right, so look at here, we have different options to create a new React application. Either you can use npx or npm or yarn. Okay, so I am going to use npx command to quickly create a new React application. npx comes with npm 5.2 plus and higher. In order to use npm, you need to first install create a React app package, and then you can just use this command to create a React app using npm. Okay, and if we are using yarn, then you can use this command to create a React app. Okay, so these are the three options. You can use either one to quickly create a new React application. Now just copy this command and we'll create a new React app. Go to the folder. I have created a React.js folder in Windows machine, and I'm going to open this folder in a command prompt and just paste the command that just we have copied, and let's give project name as react-frontend and hit enter. So this will take few minutes to install the packages using Node.js. Let's wait for a moment. Alright guys, now our application is successfully created. Now let's move to the newly created folder cd react frontend and just type npm start. So this will start a React application development server. Let's wait a couple of seconds. Now React application is running on development server on port 3000. Let's go to the browser and let's access this URL from the browser. In a new tab, just type localhost 3000. Yeah, here we go. The React application is successfully running on local development server on port 3000. Alright, now what we'll do, we'll open our React application in Visual Studio Code IDE and let us start writing the code to consume a REST API. Alright, great. Again, go back to the command prompt, Control C, yes, and then just type code dot. So this will open Visual Studio Code IDE with this current folder. Okay, just hit enter. Now we have our React application in Visual Studio Code IDE. Now let's go and let's quickly explore the folder structure. So look at here, this is node underscore modules folder. Inside this folder, all the packages are installed by node and npm. This is the public folder. Inside public folder, we have index.html file. So this is the single file that basically React application uses to render all the components. So basically we use React to develop a single page application, right? So index.html is a single HTML file we use to render all the React components. Alright, and src folder, under src folder we keep all the components that we develop. And this is the package.json. So basically package.json contains all the JavaScript dependencies. Alright, for example, look at here, this is application name and this is the version of this project, and the React dependencies, React DOM dependencies. Alright, and inside src folder we have app.js file. So this is the root component of our React application, and here we have index.js file. So this is the top render file of our React application. And look at here, we basically import app component in index.js file, and here we access a root ID. So root ID basically we have in an index.html file. For example, this is the index.html file. Inside that we have a div, so all the components will render inside this div. Okay, and this div we access in index.js file by using document.getElementById. Okay, and we use react-dom.render method to render this app component. Okay, great. Now once we are familiar with these files and folder structure of React application, now let's go ahead and let's add Bootstrap CSS library to our React application. Go to the terminal, new terminal, and here basically we can use a npm command to install a Bootstrap CSS library. Alright, now just type the command npm install bootstrap save. Alright, hit enter. So this will take a couple of seconds to install Bootstrap library. Alright, after installing Bootstrap package, we need to add a Bootstrap library to our React application. Go to the index.js file, and here we add a Bootstrap library. We basically import Bootstrap library here. For example, import bootstrap /disk/css and then bootstrap.min.css. Okay, save the file. Alright, go to the src folder. Within src folder, create a new folder called component. Let's say components. Okay, and within src folder again create a new folder called services. Okay, and within a service folder, let's create a file and let's name it as user service.js. Okay, now what we'll do, we will add http Axios library to make a REST API call. Okay, so go to the terminal again and just type npm install Axios. So Axios is basically a HTTP library to make a HTTP call or a REST API call. Okay, hit enter. Alright, now Axios package is installed in node_modules package. Now let's import Axios. Import Axios from Axios. Okay, now here let's create a constant and let's create a constant to save a REST API endpoint URL. Let's say users REST API URL. Okay, and this is http localhost .8080 and then /API/users. Okay, now let's go ahead and let's create a class. Let's name it as user service. Alright, within a class we'll create a method called getUsers, and Axios object provides a get method, and let's pass a URL. Alright, so this is basically a get HTTP method we are going to call here. So this REST endpoint basically handles HTTP GET request, right? So that's why here we are using get method to call this REST endpoint. Alright guys, now what we'll do, we'll export object of this class. For that, let's use export and then default, and here we basically create an object of this class and we export it. Alright, so remember this step is very important. So here we create a user service class and we export object of this class. Alright, great. Now it's time to create a React component. Go to the component folder and within a components folder, let's create a new component called user component.js, and here let's import React from React, and then let's also import a user service. So we are going to call user service method from this component, so let's import it. Services and then user service. Alright, now let's create a component. Let's call it as user component. We are going to use ES6 classes to create a component here, and let's extend this component from react.component. Okay. Alright, now once we create a component, then we need to export it. Export default and then name of the component. Alright, so remember these steps. So in component we have a state, right? So each component have their own state, and first let's define a constructor, and within a constructor we initialize the state. So let us say this dot state. Now we have a constructor and state. In a state we have defined a users array. So each component have a render method, right? So let's add a render method. So render method basically returns a JSX. Create a div. So I'm not going to cover any React basics over here, so I'm just developing a component which will just display a list of users on a web page. Alright, great. Now inside this div we write a JSX. Okay, JSX, it basically it is a syntax of JavaScript plus HTML. Now what we'll do, we'll use component did mount lifecycle method to call a REST API. Component did mount. So this is the lifecycle method which we can use to call a REST API. Okay. Here what I will do, I will call user service, and then user service provides get users method, and then this has a response. Okay, and here what we'll do, we simply set a data to the state of the component. For that we are going to use set state method, and here we have users, right? Users array in a state. So let's go ahead and let's assign a response to the users array. Response dot data. All right, once we get a data from the REST API and we store in a users array, then what we'll do, we'll design a table over here and we display data in a table. First I will write here h1 tag, and let's say users list, and then let's render this text in a center. Class name, so look at here the class name, this is the camel case. We use this kind of attribute in a React, so this is basically a camel case of class name, but basically in normal CSS and HTML we use attribute like this, right? Class, but in React we use camel case naming convention like class name like this. Okay, and here we add a CSS class name, that is text center. Okay, and here we create a table, and let's add class, CSS class to the table here. Let's say table and table stripped, and inside a table we create a table body. First let's define a table header. Create a table row, and here let's add a table header called user ID, and then user first name, and then user last name, and then user email ID. Alright, now we have added a header to the table. Now it's time to add table body. So notice here in a JSX we write a JavaScript code within a curly braces, and here we are going to use a map operator to iterate over a user's array. Okay, this dot state dot users and then dot map, and here inside a map we have a user, and let's define a row, and for each row we need to define a key, unique key. So let us say user dot id. Alright, and here let's add a data. Let's use open and close curly braces to access a data like user ID and user first name, user last name, and user email ID. That's it. Alright guys, we have created a component, and inside a render method we have added a JSX code to display a list of users in a table. It's pretty simple, right? Now we have created a component. Let's copy this component name and go to the app.js file, and in this file let me remove this code. Inside this code let me also remove this header. Here let's add this component, user component, and make sure that you have imported this component at the top. Alright, and look at here, app component is already imported in index.js file over here. Okay, alright guys, we are almost completing our implementation. Let me quickly summarize what we have implemented so far. We have created a user component which extends React component, and inside a user component we have created a constructor. Inside a constructor we should have to add a super keyword, and we need to pass props object to the React component. Okay, so this is the mandatory step. And then we have created a component did amount method. So this is a lifecycle method which will get called immediately after a component is mounted, and basically we use component did amount method to call array endpoints. For example, look at here, we are calling get users method of user service class, and get users basically provides a list of users. Okay, so inside a get users method we are calling a REST API using Axios get method. This returns a list of user objects. Okay, and we have a render method. So render method is also a lifecycle method of the component, and each component should have a render method. Inside render method we write a JSX. So JSX is a syntax for JavaScript, and React team is recommended to use a JSX to to develop a user interface in a React component. Alright, and then we have used map operator to iterate over a user array, and then we have used a table over here in order to display the list of users. It's pretty simple. Alright guys, and then finally we just run the project now. Just type npm start and hit enter, and let's wait for a couple of seconds. Alright, let's go back to the browser and let's access this application. In a browser, just refresh localhost 3000. Okay. Alright, so we are not getting data populated on a table, so let's take a look at the issue. Open developer tools and go to the console, and here you can see we are getting CORS policy issue. Alright, so typically we get this issue because our React application is running on different port, that is on 3000, and Spring Boot application is running on port 8080, right? So both the applications are running on different port. That's why we typically get this issue in a browser. So let's quickly fix this issue. Go to the Spring Boot application, go to the user controller, and here let's add cross origin annotation, and here it provides origins attribute, and here we provide a origin from which this controller gets the request. In our case, we are getting the Spring Boot application is getting request from the React application, and which is running on port 3000. Let's add a origin here like this. Now let's rerun Spring Boot project, and hopefully we'll be able to resolve this issue. Let's stop the server and restart Spring Boot application. Okay. Alright, Spring Boot project is up and running. Let's go back to the browser and let's refresh. Yeah, here we go. We successfully displayed a list of users on a page, but again we got some issue here because the user email ID is not populating here. So let me see what is the issue. So in here you can see it is an email, but here in a component we have given email ID, right? So let me remove this ID and save the file, and let's go back to the browser. Yeah, here we go. We successfully get a email data in a table. Alright guys, this is how we have developed React with Spring Boot full stack application step by step. I hope you find this video tutorial useful. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Whenever I will publish such videos, you will get notified, and I will plan to develop a brand new tutorial series on full stack React and Spring Boot project in upcoming videos. So subscribe to my YouTube channel. Whenever I will publish such video series, you will get notified. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.